Andrew Marr joins me, LBC presenter, as you know. We heard just there from Tim Humphrey that Liz Kendall will join you later on, Andrew, to talk in more detail about these changes that she's announced in the Commons. Let's just go through what we understand her to have told us, first of all. What would? Sorry, I'm inviting you to do that. So
you want me to give the list?
Yes.
OK. Well, I think the most contentious thing is around toughening the assessments for personal independence payments, or PIPs, which is the money you get, I think, between £1,500 a year and almost £10,000 a year to pay for the cost of being disabled, as it were, in some way. And you get that whether you're in work or out of work. But it's a number that's gone up and up and up. And it's part of the fast-growing welfare bill that the country, according to Liz Kendall, can't afford. And that's going to get... We have to get into the nitty-gritty for that. That's you get a certain number of points for different things. So if you need help in washing your hair, you might get 2 points, not enough to qualify for PIP. If you need help to get in and out of a bath, I do, that gets you 3 points, not enough for PIP. If you need somebody else to help wash and dress you, then you get 8 points, or certainly enough to get the personal payments. And they look at things like how far can you walk? How difficult is it for you to walk? Do you have such severe anxiety and depression that you can't cope with other people, or you can't cope with leaving the house? All those kinds of fairly intimate things the state asks you before it gives you this payment. And really, the result of today's announcement is that it will ask you those same things in a slightly gruffer way and perhaps more often. So I think that's the crucial. There's lots of other aspects of this we can go through, but that seems to me to be the most contentious and perhaps crucial aspect of it.
And the most politically risky, perhaps, for Labour.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Tell me about this element of it. And we'll come back to the other changes that were announced. And again, the detail of that we still need to get, really. But the politics of this from a Labour governance point of view, because I thought yesterday was interesting hearing people like Diane Abbott say this is not Labour government, this is not what Labour governments do. And you had somebody like Emma Reynolds responding saying, yes, it is. Labour, clue is in the name, is the party of work. This is about getting people back into work who can work. There's a battle going on there within the party, isn't there?
There absolutely is, and it goes right the way back to the Second World War, more or less, when we have the Beveridge Report, which provides the foundations for the welfare state, which Labour brings in. And Beveridge, who's a Liberal politician himself, said that we had to slay the 5 giants that were holding the country back. And the first of those 5 giants was actually idleness. So the thought that if you possibly can work, you should work, indeed you have a duty to work, has been there inside the welfare state from the beginning. The question is, how hard do we push people into work if they have, particularly these days, mental conditions, anxiety, depression, stress, and particularly in areas of the country where, frankly, there aren't any good jobs or aren't many good jobs around. And that's really what the argument's about. You hear Labour MPs from some of the more deprived parts of the country saying, look, you are trying to drive people who are already very poor on very low, relatively mean benefits, because the British system does not pay out very much compared to other countries, and you're going to drive them into poverty, and that isn't Labour. And you hear plenty of other people saying, yeah, but think of all the number of people, the millions of people who are, as it were, stuck on benefits because the incapacity benefit is more generous and is less tested than what we used to call unemployment benefit. They're stuck on those benefits, perhaps for the rest of their lives, and that is a hideous way to live your life. And as a progressive government, we have to end that.
It's also worth saying, when you look back to the past, there are a lot of these benefits, particularly for long-term sickness and the like, they were originally designed in a very industrial Britain, weren't they? And now we're looking at these growing levels of anxiety. I'm sure anxiety existed then as well, but these growing levels of recorded anxiety anyway, amongst young people in particular, the growth seems exponential. That isn't something the welfare system has really ever had to tackle before, is it?
It isn't. And clearly there is a kind of generational as well as a political reaction to this, because perhaps people of our generation might look at younger people and think, what's got into them? We had anxiety, we had stress, we were bullied at work, and we just kept going in a kind of slightly self-satisfied way, because attitudes have changed. Mm. And people, this culture of self-care and looking after yourself has become more and more important. And the trouble is that for some people, I think about 200,000 young people, for instance, have never worked, have gone on to benefits with mental conditions straight out of education. and they're on these benefits, and they have never worked. And the way the system is structured at the moment, they will never work, because trying to get work means that you lose the benefits immediately. And that is one other thing that Liz Kendall has done today, which I think is a very good idea. It's a good notion, which is the right to try. In other words, I'm on benefits at the moment, perhaps, and I'm sitting at home, and I see something that I could do. I could actually put in 4 hours a week or 6 hours a week at the local shop behind the counter. Give it a go. Under the new system, I won't lose all my benefits immediately. I try to do that. And that seems to me to be an entirely sensible way of trying to encourage people into work.
Yeah, the sort of quiet nudge without everything coming sort of crashing down. The whole question of why we're in this position of having such a sick population, or an anxious and sick population, it absolutely behoves us, doesn't it, to look back, let's say 20 years, to why that is. And there are a number of reasons why that is, or why that might be.
I think we can point to two in particular, or three actually, now I think about it. One is that the deindustrialization of the Thatcher years, and then what happened around the financial crash, 2007, 2008, an awful lot of people lost their jobs and lost the industries where they would have been working. And that means you start from a position where, compared to some other countries, there simply there aren't as many good jobs around as you might have liked. Then you have all of our problems with the National Health Service and people with chronic conditions having to wait longer and longer for treatments or for operations. And of course, while they're waiting, they're on sickness benefit or incapacity benefit. That goes on for longer. And then finally, of course, there's COVID, which completely, it's like a revolutionary shock in the system and drives an awful lot of people into mental health problems and the rest of it. The trouble is, Sheila, that lots of similar countries like France and Germany, they might not have had our modern history in exactly the same way, but they've all been through COVID in just the same way. And unlike Britain, far more people have got back to work since. And they haven't seen a huge rise in people on sickness benefit.
I was reading earlier, the majority of comparable nations, as you describe it, they've either gone back to pre-COVID norms or increased.
Or better, yes. Yeah. And I think, sorry to jump in, but I think that is partly about the way that we have designed our welfare system. So, you turn left and you get your unemployment benefit, and it's a certain amount of money, and people keep on at you to try and get jobs and apply for jobs all the time. And if you fail, you're penalised, and it gets tougher and tougher and tougher. Or you turn in the other direction, you go on incapacity benefit. And up to now, people haven't really checked up on you. And by the way, you've got twice as much money. So the system incentivises people to go onto incapacity benefit if they possibly can. And that may be the problem.
Can I suggest a fourth for your list of reasons as well?
Go for it.
Austerity. And without necessarily going into any political discussion on austerity, there's pretty hard evidence of what it did to some people in most of our communities, isn't there?
Well, you are absolutely right. I should have put that in myself. But of course, it's the hollowing out of so many things that we rely on in the public realm, whether it's, keeping your chin up by going to the local swimming baths or going to the local library or going to, a well-run park. And if all those things have gone, then, life is tougher and you'll be more depressed. You look at the effect of austerity on the amount of money on people's pockets and the effect of that, and indeed the sort of technical changes on the high street. And there are maybe fewer places to go and meet other people in a kind of warm, comforting environment, have a conversation, cheer yourself up. Yeah. So, all of that's part of it as well.
Drug and alcohol services, local authorities, that kind of thing. That's all led to ill health, hasn't it? And poor mental health as well. So, but to the politics of this for the Labour government, she was a confident performance in the Commons there from Liz Kendall, wasn't it? What will Keir Starmer and his team of strategists constantly thinking about, where this number 10 machine is heading and the next election? What will they be thinking about? What are the threats here?
So the first thing that they will be very much aware of is that if you actually ask the British public, then the biggest number, a majority, think that the British welfare system isn't strict enough. In other words, people are quite hard-line on benefits, generally speaking. So this is not necessarily a vote killer. The next thing they'll be looking at is the Labour Party itself. Now, they know that there is what we used to call the hard left, or the left of the Labour Party, MPs like Diane Abbott, John McDonnell, and many more who are completely opposed to this and will stand up and say so. Clive Lewis has just spoken in the House of Commons. He's one of them. Stand up and oppose what the government are doing. Long-held principle. What they're trying to work out is how much that unease and disquiet and hostility feeds into the core of the Labour Party, further in towards the centre. So that's why they've been bringing in groups of Labour MPs in groups of 20 into Downing Street and trying to explain what they want to do ahead of time. What we don't know yet is whether this is something that will offend, outrage and push perhaps 20 Labour MPs into rebellion, or 50, or 60 or 80? And that is the crucial question. And I don't know the answer to it, but I do think that anxiety about this has been much more widespread across the Labour backbenches than perhaps most people thought.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thanks for coming on the programme. It was a pleasure. And just to remind you that Liz Kendall will be joining Andrew on his programme tonight from 6 here on LBC.